Ma'am, please, just let me wait under your awning till the tow truck comes. You're soaked through. I know. I'll stand right here, I promise. I don't want to bother anyone. How far did you walk? About 2 miles. My car had black ice past the old grain elevator. Come inside. I've got coffee on. No. I saw the boy through the window. I shouldn't be walking into a house with a child in it, not like this, not a stranger. Dad? Who is that? It's okay, Milo. Go grab the flannel blanket from the closet. Really, I can just... Ma'am, you can't stand out there all night. Get in here. That was Sam Okafor, a widower, a father of one, 3 weeks behind on the shop rent, and his son, 7-year-old Milo Okafor, asleep on the couch, still asking, some nights, when his mother, Aisha Okafor, was coming home. Sam had $11 in his wallet and a stranger standing on his porch who looked like she hadn't eaten since breakfast. He invited her in anyway. Milo came back with the blanket, and the woman, her hands trembling, wrapped herself around it like it was the only warm thing she'd touched in years. "Thank you," she said quietly. Sam pulled a chair close to the wood stove and heated a can of soup on the hot plate he kept behind the counter. It wasn't much, but she drank it like it mattered. Her name was Ruth. She didn't offer a last name, and Sam didn't ask. A woman her age had just walked 2 miles on ice. Her boots were soaked through. Her voice had started to shake in a way that worried him more than the cold did. While Sam called the county line to check on road conditions, Ruth's eyes drifted to the drawings pinned above his workbench. Meridian Crossing, Founders District Revitalization. Her hand tightened around the mug. Sam noticed. He didn't say anything. The dispatcher told him the pass road wouldn't reopen till morning, no tow trucks running till the ice broke. Sam was told to keep her warm, keep her talking, watch for confusion. So Ruth stayed. 6 weeks later, when her daughter, one of the wealthiest developers in the state, found out exactly whose porch her mother had walked onto that night, would she protect the deal that was about to bulldoze Sam's shop, or the man who'd taken her mother in without asking a single question? By morning, the whole town was a sheet of glass. Sam checked on Ruth twice before sunrise. Her hands were still unsteady, and a bruise had bloomed across her collarbone from the crash. As soon as the road cleared, he drove her to urgent care himself, Milo riding along in his pajamas under a coat, half asleep against the window the whole way. The nurse told Sam, with Ruth's permission, that she had mild hyperthermia and a bruised rib, nothing broken. She needed rest and someone checking on her for a day or two. Ruth sat through the exam quiet and composed, the way people are quiet when they've had practice hiding how scared they actually are. Sam listened to every word twice. That was the kind of man he'd become since Aisha died, the kind who read expiration dates, tested the smoke detectors on the 1st of every month, kept a laminated list of emergency numbers taped inside the pantry, checked twice that the space heater in Milo's room was unplugged before school. 14 months earlier, he'd been the guy other crews trusted to catch a problem before it became a funeral. Now, most mornings, he was just trying to get his son's shoes on the right feet. "You tied them backwards again," Milo told him at breakfast. "I've fixed that yesterday." "You fixed it wrong. Mom used to do the double knot thing so they wouldn't come undone at recess." "I remember the double knot thing." "You don't do it right, though." Sam knelt down and redid both laces without a word, and Milo let him, watching his father's hands the whole time like he was checking his work. Aisha used to do it without even looking up from her coffee. She'd been a site supervisor for Black Line Structural, the kind of person who could double-check a load calculation and remember a permission slip in the same breath, who ran a crew of 30 men twice her size and had every one of them calling her ma'am within a week. Sam had spent 16 years as a construction inspector, the guy who signed off, or didn't, on whether a structure was safe to stand on. They met on a job site in the rain, arguing over a rebar spacing that turned out 3 years later to be the story they told at their wedding. 4 days before Aisha died, Sam flagged a scaffolding assembly at a Black Line warehouse site. The bracing didn't match the load spec, off by enough that it mattered, not enough that anyone in a hurry would notice.
He filed the warning through the system himself, the way he'd filed 100 warnings before, most of them resolved within a day. Someone opened the file. Someone marked it resolved. No inspection report, no signature, no second look. The scaffold gave way during a shift change the next week. Aisha was on it. The Blackline internal report said she'd been in an unauthorized zone. The insurance company used that line to deny most of the claim. The company sent flowers to the funeral. A vice president Sam never met shook his hand at the service and told him Aisha had been one of the good ones, like she was a piece of equipment that had performed well before it broke. Sam never set foot on another job site. He converted the garage behind the house into a one-man inspection and permitting office, just him and a drafting table, helping small contractors who couldn't afford a big firm. Some months it was enough. That winter, it wasn't. A contractor still owed him $900 and had stopped picking up. The shop rent was late, and then the city sent an offer to buy his building for the Meridian Crossing redevelopment. The public renderings showed a plaza, apartments, a school expansion. Families in the drawings walked dogs past outdoor cafes that didn't exist yet. The public renderings also showed the access road curving around Founders Row, well clear of the old buildings. The contractor drawings Sam had been quietly hired to estimate for a completely different job weeks before he understood what he was looking at showed the road cutting straight through it, through his shop, through 8 other buildings that hadn't sold. He didn't know that yet, that first week. He just knew the woman on his couch had gone very quiet when she saw the plans on his wall.
Ruth meant to leave the next day. Then her rental car needed a part that wouldn't arrive for a week, and the one motel in town had lost heat in the storm. Sam offered her the cot in the back office. She tried to pay him. He wouldn't take it. She bought groceries instead, more than she needed, the kind of overbuying people do when they want to be useful and don't know how else to show it. Milo started calling her Miss Ruthie without asking anyone's permission, and somehow that settled it more than any conversation could have. At first, Sam didn't leave them alone together, not out of suspicion, just as a father. Ruth respected it without being asked. She helped Milo with his spelling words while Sam worked 10 feet away, sounding out the hard ones with him twice before letting him try alone. She mended the strap on his backpack with a needle she borrowed from the shop's first aid kit. She folded the flannel blanket every morning and set it back on the shelf like it belonged to someone else, careful with it in a way that made Sam wonder once or twice if she'd noticed whose it had been. One evening, Sam found her looking at a photo in the hallway. Aisha in a hard hat, one arm around Sam, the other holding a much smaller Milo, all 3 of them squinting into the sun outside a half-built warehouse. "She looks like she ran the place," Ruth said. "She did, better than the men who were actually in charge. What happened to her?" Sam looked at the photo a long moment. Somebody ignored a warning. Ruth didn't push for more. She could see what the answer cost him, the way his jaw tightened around the word warning, like it still had teeth. "I'm sorry," she said. "I won't ask again unless you want to tell me." "I know," Sam said, and for the first time since the storm, that felt like enough. The roads cleared after 4 days. Ruth could have left. Instead, she rented a small room above the pharmacy 2 blocks over, paying month to month, telling the pharmacist she was between things. She kept coming by most afternoons, partly because Milo expected her, and partly, though she didn't say it out loud, because the papers spread across Sam's table had started to matter to her in a way she hadn't expected. She'd sit at the far end of the table with a cup of tea, ostensibly reading, while Sam worked through drainage calculations and permit stacks. Some afternoons, she'd ask a question that was too specific for a stranger to think of: why a contractor would separate a public set from a construction set, what a certified soil report was actually supposed to prove, and Sam would answer without thinking much of it, the way you answer a curious friend. Sam noticed she understood more than she let on. She recognized old grading standards. She knew exactly why a developer might keep two versions of the same plan. But she never took the lead. The discovery was Sam's. A small paving company hired him to estimate drainage work off a contractor set. The permit number matched the plans shown to Founders Row residents at the public meeting. The drawings didn't. The public version routed heavy trucks around the north side of the old rail yard. The contractor version ran them straight through 8 home-based businesses, Sam's included. The public version showed a modest drainage upgrade. The contractor version needed almost double the capacity. And the soil report attached to it was dated 3 days before the samples were supposedly taken. Sam checked the date twice, then a third time, laying the report flat under the lamp like it might change if he looked hard enough. "That can't be right," he said. Ruth leaned over, careful not to seem too eager. "What is it?" "The soil samples weren't taken until the 14th. This report's dated the 11th. He sat back. "You can't certify ground conditions before you've tested the ground." One plan was meant to calm the neighborhood. The other was meant to make the numbers work. They couldn't both be true. That night, after Milo was asleep, Sam sat at the table a long time, the two plans side by side under the lamp, not saying anything. Ruth didn't try to fill the silence. She just sat with him, the way you sit with someone who's realized something they can't unrealize. 2 weeks after the storm, the city held its first public hearing on Meridian Crossing. The community center was packed tighter than anyone remembered seeing it. Folding chairs lined against the back wall, the smell of instant coffee from an urn nobody had refilled since 6. Councilman Grant Whitfield sat at the center of the table, mid-50s, unbothered, the kind of man who explained things to people until their objections started to sound unreasonable. He wore a tie the exact shade of the Meridian Crossing logo, whether on purpose or not, nobody could say. He called displacement voluntary participation. He called lowball offers early opportunity pricing. He used the word legacy 4 times in his opening remarks, and every time a few people in the crowd exchanged a look. When Sam's name was called, Whitfield barely looked up. He saw a guy in a worn work jacket who ran a one-man shop out of his garage. He didn't see 16 years of catching mistakes before concrete got poured. Sam laid the public plan under the document camera. His hands weren't quite steady, but his voice was. Then the contractor plan beside it. Which one did the city actually approve? Whitfield smiled, the kind of smile that got him through 100 meetings like this one. Drawings evolve as a project develops, Mr. Okafor. This one keeps the road north of Founders Row. Sam tapped the paper. This one runs it straight through 8 buildings. The project didn't change. The list of who loses their building did. A murmur moved through the room. Someone near the back said loud enough to carry, "That's my building." Sam recognized the voice, Delia Marsh, who ran the alterations shop 2 doors down, who'd been fighting the buyout offer longer than he had. Sam walked through the drainage numbers, the mismatched dates on the soil report. He kept it simple, the way Aisha used to say you should present anything technical to a room that wasn't technical. One plan for the public, a different one for the contractors, and the signatures didn't match the work. The city engineer, a tired-looking man named Osei Whitmore, who'd clearly been hoping for a quiet Tuesday, asked for both documents to be submitted for review. The council tabled the vote. Not a win, just 45 days bought. Outside, in the cold, Ruth was waiting at the bottom of the steps, her coat pulled tight. "You just delayed a $200 million vote with 2 pieces of paper." "I bought people 45 days. That's not nothing." Ruth looked back at the building, lit up against the dark. "No," she said, "it isn't." Delia caught up to Sam in the parking lot, gripping his arm. "I don't know how you did that in there, but thank you. My daughter and I have run that shop for 11 years. "I didn't do anything but read the plans out loud," Sam said. "That's more than anyone else has done."
That week, Delia Marsh started knocking on doors along Founders Row, a legal pad under her arm, asking every business owner the same question. Had anyone shown them the contractor plan, or only the public one? By Thursday, she had 6 names willing to say on record that they'd never seen anything but the rendering with the road curving safely away from their storefronts. She brought the list to Sam's shop that evening, setting it on the counter like evidence in a trial only she seemed to know was already underway. "I figured you should have this," she said, "in case it helps." "It helps a lot," Sam said, reading down the list. Fabrics, a bakery, a bike repair shop, a tax office that had been on that block since before Sam was born. "You didn't have to do this." "I didn't have to," Delia agreed, "but somebody built that road through my life without asking, and I'd rather find out why than wait to see if it happens anyway." Ruth, setting mugs of tea on the counter, looked at the list a long moment. "This is the kind of thing that used to make a difference at Callaway Meridian," she said quietly, "before it stopped." "Before what stopped?" Delia asked. "Before the company decided evidence from ordinary people mattered less than evidence from lawyers," Ruth said, and didn't explain further, and Delia didn't ask, though she filed the sentence away the way people do when they sense there's more to a story than they're being told. By Monday, the system answered back. An inspector showed up at Sam's shop, citing an electrical panel that had passed inspection 3 years earlier, plus a new occupancy classification that never applied to a business with no walk-in customers. Fine, $2,900. Required upgrades, $19,000. Appeal window, 3 months, during which he couldn't legally operate. Sam read the citation twice standing in his own doorway, the inspector already back in his truck. 2 clients dropped him within 2 days after getting anonymous messages claiming he was under investigation. A third called to say he was sorry, he needed someone who could actually pull permits right now, and Sam told him he understood, though his hands were shaking a little when he hung up the phone. That Friday, Milo came downstairs holding an envelope covered in dinosaur stickers, his savings for the class trip to the science center. $41, counted out in ones and quarters. "I don't have to go," he said. Sam closed the envelope and handed it back. "That's not your bill to pay." He crouched down. "Your job is school and telling me my cooking is bad. Your eggs are bad. See? You're already doing your job perfectly." Milo almost smiled, then didn't. "Are we going to lose the shop?" Sam didn't answer right away. He wasn't going to lie to his son, and he wasn't ready to tell him the truth either. "Not if I can help it," he finally said. "Go put your dinosaur money back in your room. I mean it." Ruth watched from the doorway, saying nothing, her tea gone cold in her hands. The next morning, there was a suitcase by the front door, Ruth's. "You're leaving?" "I think I should." "Why?" "Whitfield didn't know I was involved until after the hearing. I think my being here gave someone a reason to push harder." "You think the inspection happened because of you?" "I think it's possible, and I don't want to be the reason it gets worse." Sam carried the suitcase back inside, setting it down harder than he meant to. "The room over the pharmacy still paid through the month. That's not the point." "I know. Don't let him decide when you leave." Milo appeared in the hall, still in his pajamas, backpack already on for reasons no one understood. "Are you still coming Sunday?" Ruth looked at him a long moment. "Yes, I'm still coming Sunday." She almost told Sam the truth that day.
she didn't. It was the first real mistake she made with him, and later she would think of that morning, the suitcase in the hall, the unopened truth sitting behind her teeth, as the moment she started lying by omission instead of by accident. Ruth had spent 3 years quietly raising concerns about a contractor's safety record without ever getting enough proof to force anyone's hand. Company lawyers had called her concerns unsupported. Board members she'd known for 2 decades had started taking meetings without her. She was afraid that if she told Sam who she really was too soon, he'd think she'd been sent to watch him. She was also afraid her daughter would find out where she was and shut the whole thing down before Ruth had what she needed. So she waited for one more file, one more confirmation. Every day she waited made it harder to say. 3.5 weeks after the storm, Ruth set a worn business card on Sam's kitchen table. Her hand didn't shake when she did it, though she'd rehearsed the moment enough times that morning that it should have. Ruth Calloway, founding partner, Calloway Meridian. Sam read it twice. You founded the company, and Vanessa Calloway is your daughter. Yes. Vanessa Calloway was 41, CEO of one of the largest development firms in the Midwest, known for being precise, controlled, and almost impossible to rattle. Sam had seen her name on the letterhead of the buyout offer sitting in his desk drawer. How long were you going to wait to tell me? I kept telling myself I needed proof first. You sat in my house while her company was trying to take it. I know. You watched me lose my permit, and you still said nothing. I know. She didn't defend herself. You're right. For the first time since the storm, Sam didn't ask her to stay for dinner. He stood at the counter with his back half-turned, and Ruth sat very still, letting the silence be exactly as uncomfortable as it needed to be. I'm not asking you to forgive it today. I just needed you to hear it from me instead of finding it some other way. You almost let me find it some other way.
I know that too. Ruth opened her bag anyway, because there was more, and it mattered more than her own discomfort. I came here because a retired safety inspector reached out to me before he passed. His daughter gave me what was left of his files. The files showed a pattern. Safety flags marked resolved with no documentation, inspection dates altered after the fact, supervisors quietly rewarded for avoiding delays. Blackline Structural, the same contractor that had built the scaffold that killed Aisha, was now the lead contractor on Meridian Crossing. Ruth had left the company's board 3 years earlier when Vanessa refused to cut ties with Blackline over evidence her lawyers called incomplete. Ruth believed the pattern was real. Vanessa believed her mother wanted the company to act before anything could be proven. Somewhere in that disagreement, they'd stopped speaking almost entirely. Birthday cards, the occasional strained phone call, nothing more. The storm was an accident, Ruth said. Meeting you was an accident. Staying quiet was a choice. I'm sorry you didn't hear it from me sooner. It didn't erase Sam's anger, but it let the conversation keep going. Sam pulled out Aisha's file and opened the original warning email. Ruth recognized the tracking code immediately, the same format she'd seen 100 times in board meetings, back when anyone still let her into the room. The archive showed it had been opened twice and marked resolved the afternoon before Aisha's accident. No repair record, no second inspection, nothing. For 14 months, Sam had wondered if his warnings simply got lost in a busy system. Now he knew someone had seen it and closed it anyway. They saw it, he said, very quietly. Yes, Ruth said, and somebody closed it. Sam sat with his hands flat on the table for a long time. He'd imagined this moment more than once, finding proof, finally, of what he'd always suspected. He'd imagined it feeling like relief. It didn't. It felt like being told the ground had never actually been solid, not even for a second the whole time he'd been standing on it. Ruth called her daughter that afternoon,
told her to come to Founders Row and to bring the head of compliance. Vanessa arrived 4 days later in a gray coat, no entourage, just a compliance director named Priya Anand at her side. She walked into a kitchen with a city citation sitting next to a coloring book, a boy asking his mother's old friend for help with a spelling word, and a man cutting the crusts off a sandwich like it was any other Tuesday. "Are you Miss Ruthie's daughter?" Milo asked. "I am." She was really cold that night. There was no accusation in it. That's what made it land. Vanessa asked if Sam had gone to reporters or asked for money. He'd done neither. He laid both site plans on the table next to Aisha's file and the permit suspension. "I'm not asking you for money." "Then what?" "Reopen my wife's case. Give my shop a real inspection. Stop the road until people see the actual plan." Vanessa said she could pull her company out, but she couldn't overturn a city order or make Blackline legally responsible on her own. Sam already knew that. He wasn't asking her to be a judge. He was asking her to use the authority she actually had. "You understand what you're asking me to walk away from," Vanessa said. "This project is 3 years and $40 million of pre-development work. I understand what I already lost. I'm not asking you to feel bad about it. I'm asking you to fix what's still fixable." Vanessa looked at her mother, who said nothing, who had learned, sitting in this kitchen for weeks, when silence was the more honest choice. Before she left that first day, Vanessa found her mother alone in Sam's small backyard, sitting on an overturned crate near the woodpile, watching the last of the daylight go orange over the fence line. "You've been living here, in a garage office guest room, for a month?" "I have." "Why didn't you call me the day the car went off the road?" Ruth considered the question honestly, the way she had promised herself if it ever came. "Because the last time I called you with a concern about Blackline, you had legal call me back instead of calling yourself. I didn't want this to become another memo." Vanessa flinched, small but real. "That's fair." "It isn't a punishment, Vanessa. It's just true." "I know." She sat down on the woodpile beside her mother, careful of her coat. "I used to think you left the board because you couldn't accept that a company this size has to make trade-offs. I've spent 3 years being angry at you for that." "And now?" "Now I think I was angry because some part of me already agreed with you, and it was easier to be angry at you than to admit the company I built might be built on something rotten." Ruth reached over and took her daughter's hand, the way she used to when she was small enough to need it crossing a street. "I never stopped being proud of what you built. I just wanted you to build it on something that wouldn't collapse the first time someone tested it." Neither of them said anything else for a while. The light kept fading, and from inside the house came the sound of Milo laughing at something, and neither woman moved to go back in right away. Priya began preserving records that afternoon. Within a day, the tracking data confirmed which login had closed Sam's warning. A regional operations director named Kurt Bellamy, now overseeing Blackline's work on Meridian Crossing. A man Sam had seen on paperwork a dozen times without knowing what it meant. Vanessa wanted to handle it quietly first, suspend Blackline, reopen the case, negotiate with the city before anything went public. "You want to keep this inside the company," Sam said. "I want to verify it before I burn it down." "And the families about to lose their buildings?" "They'll be protected while we review it." Sam nodded at the closure notice sitting by Milo's crayons. They were told that before the inspections even started. Vanessa didn't have an answer for that. She looked at the notice a long moment, then at her mother, then at the boy coloring 4 stick figures in front of a small house, and something in her expression shifted, though she didn't say what.
The investigation ran 9 days. Some emails were missing. Some invoices looked fine until someone asked what work was actually behind them.
Priya's team pulled records at all hours. Sam kept working his own side, comparing inspection dates against property records late into the night after Milo was asleep. Then Priya's team found a hauling calculation buried in a private bid package built entirely around the road running through Founders Row. The company hadn't just drawn the second route, it had priced the whole project on it, months before the public hearing where residents were shown the other version. All 8 targeted buildings had rejected the city's buyout offer. All 8 got inspected within 6 weeks. No other block in town saw anything close to that scrutiny. Sam laid it out on a spreadsheet at his kitchen table, one line for every business, watching the pattern get more obvious the longer he stared at it. Then the accountants found $140,000 in community outreach payments to a firm owned by Whitfield's brother-in-law. Invoices existed, actual work product did not. No meeting minutes, no attendance sheets, no deliverables anyone could point to. Ruth spent those 9 days mostly quiet, helping Milo with homework, cooking more than anyone could eat, staying out of rooms where she wasn't needed. Milo, for his part, had started asking harder questions than either adult in the house was prepared for. "Is Miss Ruthie's daughter going to take our shop?" "No," Sam said, "not if we can help it." "Whitfield said on the news it's good for the town." "Whitfield said a lot of things that turned out not to be true." Milo considered that with the particular seriousness of a 7-year-old working through a math problem that didn't have a clean answer. "Mom used to say you can tell when a building's not safe because it makes a sound before it falls, like a warning." Sam went very still. "Where'd you hear that?" "She told me once when I asked why she wore the yellow hat all the time." Milo picked at the edge of the table. "Did the building that fell on Mom make a sound first?" Sam had never told his son the specifics, not the scaffolds, not the warning, not the word resolved sitting in a file for 14 months like a locked door. He'd only ever said it was an accident, because that was the word that let a 6-year-old, then a 7-year-old, keep sleeping at night. "Yeah," Sam said finally. "It made a sound. I heard it. Somebody just didn't listen in time to fix it." "Is that why you check everything twice now? The smoke alarms and stuff?" "That's exactly why." Milo nodded slowly, like a piece had clicked into place that had been loose for a long time. "Okay," he said. "I'll help you check things too then, so there's 2 of us listening." Sam had to look away for a second before he trusted his voice again. "Deal," he said. Once, late at night, Ruth found Sam still awake at the table and sat across from him without a word, and after a while he said, not looking up, "I keep thinking about how many other Aishas there might be, on other jobs, other files somebody marked resolved." "I've thought about that every day for 3 years," Ruth said. "Is that why you kept pushing, even after they cut you out?" "I told myself it was for the workers. Some days it probably still is." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "Some days it's just guilt that I sat on a board that let this happen and didn't do enough to stop it while I still had a vote." Sam didn't say anything to that. He didn't need to. It was the kind of honesty that didn't ask for a response. Then Whitfield made his last move. In week 6, the city posted another closure order on Sam's shop. Same electrical panel, no new violation, just a fresh code of official language on the same complaint. A local blog ran a photo of Ruth walking into Sam's house with a headline calling him a con man targeting a billionaire's mother. His address went up in the comments within the hour. Milo stayed home from school after cars started slowing down outside the house, one idling long enough that Sam went out and stood in the driveway until it drove off. Vanessa offered private security and a hotel. Sam took the security, not the hotel. "I'm not moving my kid because someone printed a lie." That same day, Whitfield left Vanessa's office a voicemail, the kind of message a man leaves when he still believes he's the one in control of the room. Once the compliance pressure makes the shop unworkable, Mr. Okafor may be finally open to a real conversation. I think this is still manageable if we stay the course. Alone, it sounded bureaucratic. Next to the targeted inspections and the payments to his brother-in-law, it wasn't. Vanessa sat at Sam's kitchen table that night while Milo colored a picture of a house with 4 people in front of it. I told myself trusting the people under me was just how you run something this big. You do have to trust them, Sam said. Then what should I have done? Make sure telling the truth doesn't get someone punished. Vanessa looked at Aisha's photo on the wall. It's not that simple. No. How do you know it wouldn't have changed anything? Sam looked out at the dark shop window. Because silence is how my wife died. Vanessa was quiet a long time. My father used to say the same thing, actually, before he died, that silence was the most expensive thing a company could buy because you never see the bill until it's too late to pay it a different way. Your father sounds like he understood something you've been avoiding. My father founded this company with my mother. I think some days I've spent my whole career trying to not be either one of them, too idealistic to survive or too compromised to sleep at night. Which one are you tonight? Vanessa looked at the closure notice still sitting on the table, at Milo bent over his coloring book, at her mother's coat hanging by the door like she lived there now. I don't know yet. That night, Vanessa told her board the company was withdrawing from the Meridian Crossing Agreement, suspending Blackline, and turning its records to the city's ethics investigators. Her lawyers warned it could expose them to lawsuits. 2 board members threatened to resign. She understood all of it. She also understood that fixing it quietly would have protected the exact imbalance that caused the harm in the first place. 6 weeks to the day after Ruth had knocked on Sam's door, the city council chamber was standing room only. People stood 3 deep along the back wall. The fire marshal made a note of it and let it go. Whitfield sat at the head table, composed, certain Vanessa would protect a $250 million deal over one contractor. Milo sat in the 3rd row next to Ruth, holding his father's old tape measure in both hands, turning it over and over without opening it. Sam went first. The 2 plans, the hidden road, the soil report dated before the samples existed, the inspections that only ever hit the buildings that had refused to sell. His voice caught once on Aisha's name, and he stopped, took a breath, and kept going. Whitfield cut in, holding up an invoice. 3 months earlier, Sam had been paid $400 by the paving company for the drainage estimate. Mr. Okafor has presented himself as an uninvolved citizen. He was paid by a firm bidding on this very project. His objections only started once that work didn't lead anywhere. The room shifted. A reporter in the 2nd row started typing faster. Delia Marsh, near the back, half rose out of her seat before her daughter pulled her back down. Sam didn't deny the invoice. They paid me $400 to estimate drainage. That's how I got the 2nd set of plans. He set the original request email under the camera, dated 9 days before he ever learned his own shop sat on the contractor route. Then his own note at the bottom of the estimate. Do not rely on these quantities until the permit conflict is resolved. I flagged the conflict before I ever spoke at a hearing. I flagged it before I even knew it would cost me anything. Whitfield pressed anyway. Private documents, an unconfirmed route, the word bias used twice in one sentence. That's when Vanessa stood. The room went quiet in a different way than it had for Sam, a room recalibrating around the presence of real money. My company confirms the 2nd route was included in our official contractor bid package. It was never an unauthorized sketch. Contractors were asked to price it, and we have the internal documents to prove that, which we are submitting to this council tonight. She introduced herself, confirmed her company hadn't ordered the inspections on Sam's shop, and then added the harder truth. Our investment is what made those inspections useful to someone. She announced Callaway Meridian's withdrawal from the deal, Blackline's suspension, and full cooperation with investigators. Priya distributed the payment records tying the project account to Whitfield's relative. Then Vanessa played the voicemail, her phone held up to the chamber's microphone, Whitfield's own voice filling the room. Whitfield called it a routine conversation about regulatory timing. The city's ethics council disagreed. He'd never disclosed his family's financial stake, and the inspection requests traced directly back to his office. She read the dates aloud, one after another, until the pattern didn't need explaining anymore. The council removed him from the development committee that night, 7-1, his own vote the only dissent. Sam's fines were suspended pending an independent review. The redevelopment agreement was frozen. Everything went to the state ethics board and the county prosecutor. Justice didn't arrive in that room, but when Whitfield walked out, gathering his papers with hands that weren't quite steady anymore, the people he'd spent months calling obstacles watched him leave without any authority left, and nobody in that room looked away. Outside, Vanessa found Ruth at the bottom of the steps, the cold air sharp after the packed chamber. 2 years of short messages and long silences stood between them. I kept telling myself I needed more proof. You have it now. I know. Ruth took her hand. Nothing was fixed. Neither of them let go. I'm not going to pretend the last 3 years didn't happen, but I'd like to try being your mother again if you'll let me. I never stopped being your daughter, Mom. I just didn't know how to be it and run the company at the same time. Maybe that was always the wrong choice to have to make. Vanessa found Sam a few minutes later, standing near his truck with Milo already half asleep against his side. She apologized for doubting him, for wanting to keep it quiet. You don't need to make this easier for me, Sam said. What matters is what happens next. I know. She hesitated. For what it's worth, the way you talked about your wife in there, I don't think I've heard anyone speak about a person they lost with that much precision. Most people just say they were wonderful. You told the room exactly what was true. She'd have hated the word wonderful, Sam said. She'd have wanted the facts on record. Then I think you did right by her tonight. 8 months later, Grant Whitfield stood before a judge. Investigators had proven he'd used city inspections to pressure homeowners, hidden his family's stake in the payments, and steered project money toward a company that did no real work. He pleaded guilty to bribery and record tampering. 18 months in state custody, full repayment ordered, barred from public office for life. I picked Sam Okafor because I thought grief made him easy to push, Whitfield said before sentencing. I knew what that shop meant to his son. I called it revitalization because that sounded better than what it actually was. Sam sat in the gallery for the sentencing, Ruth beside him, Milo at home with a neighbor. He didn't feel triumphant hearing it. Mostly he felt tired. The particular tiredness of finally setting down something he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten it had weight. The independent inspection cleared Sam's shop completely. The city restored his permit and returned his fine, with a formal letter Sam kept in the same drawer as Aisha's file, not because he needed the reminder, but because he'd learned the value of paperwork the hard way and wasn't about to stop trusting it now. Aisha's case was reopened, and investigators confirmed Black Line had closed the original warning with no documentation at all. Kurt Bellamy was terminated and later named in a separate civil suit brought by 2 other families who'd lost people on Black Line sites over the years. Families Sam hadn't known existed until their names started appearing in the same filings as his. He reached out to both of them. It felt like the least he could do. One of the families, a widow named Corinne Ashby, whose husband had died in a trench collapse 2 years before Aisha Okafor, told Sam over the phone that she'd spent those 2 years assuming she'd simply misunderstood the paperwork, that maybe her husband really had made the mistake the report claimed. Hearing that someone else's warning had been closed the same way, by the same hand, was the first time in 2 years she'd let herself stop blaming him for his own death. "You don't know what that's worth," she told Sam. "I think I do," he said. "We've been carrying the same thing." They stayed in touch after that, an odd, quiet friendship built entirely out of shared grief and the relief of finally being believed. Her name was removed from the finding that had blamed her for entering an unsafe area, a line item in a report that Sam read maybe 100 times over 14 months, and then, once it was corrected, never needed to read again.
Sam eventually opened Okafor's Site Safety and Estimating. 2 employees, 3 desks, a new sign over the old garage door. Delia Marsh was his first official referral. She told everyone on the block that if Sam Okafor wouldn't sign off on it, she wasn't building it. The 6 names on her legal pad became 6 sworn statements in the eventual civil case against the city's development office. And all 6 businesses were still standing on Founders Row a year later, their storefronts freshly painted, a plaque near the old rail yard noting in small letters nobody read but everyone appreciated that the block had been preserved through community advocacy. Priya left Callaway Meridian's compliance department 6 months after the hearing to start an independent firm auditing construction safety records for cities and developers who wanted, as she put it, to find their Kurt Bellamy's before somebody died instead of after. Sam became one of her first calls whenever a project needed an outside inspector nobody could pressure. He liked the work. It felt, he told Ruth once, like doing the job he'd trained for in the first place, except this time nobody was allowed to mark his warnings resolved without a signature. Ruth kept the room above the pharmacy and picked Milo up from school twice a week, showing up early enough to chat with his teacher, the kind of small, ordinary presence that had been missing from his life longer than anyone liked to say out loud. Vanessa started coming out on Sundays, first to see her mother, then because she kept staying for dinner. She and Sam didn't fall into anything easily. They disagreed plenty. She still believed some developments could genuinely help a struggling town. He still believed no project earned trust without someone checking the numbers. But neither of them walked away when it got uncomfortable. That was new for both of them. One spring evening, Milo's class put on a spring concert. Sam got there early and sat beside Ruth in the second row, saving a seat on the aisle out of habit more than anything else. One seat stayed open. The lights dimmed. Just before the teacher raised her hands, Vanessa came in through the side door, no driver, 2 paper cups of coffee in hand, scanning the rows a little anxiously until she spotted them. "Is this seat taken?" Sam looked at the empty chair. "I saved it." She sat down, careful not to spill either cup, and handed one to Sam without being asked. On stage, Milo spotted them, his eyes moving from his dad to Ruth to Vanessa, and he smiled so wide he missed his first cue, earning a gentle nudge from the kid next to him. Afterwards, walking to the car under a sky that had finally stopped threatening rain, Milo held Ruth's hand and talked without stopping about the concert, about a science project, about whether dinosaurs could actually sing if they'd survived. Then he looked up at Vanessa. "Are you coming Sunday too?" Vanessa glanced at Sam. He handed her one of the coffee cups. "I'll save you a seat." What would you have done in Sam's shoes? Taken the truth to a public room or trusted the company to fix it quietly? Tell us in the comments. And if stories about quiet fathers and the price of integrity mean something to you, subscribe to Rebuilt Stories. Another father everyone underestimated is coming next.